Okay, so like I said, for you guys that aren't aware of the training products, I would recommend that you go and check them out. You can go to training and certification. We've got the 2D and the 3D. The 2D and the 3D are for Pro, and I believe if you just click on the links here, it'll actually say that it's for Pro Platinum. So we've got a 2D and a 3D separate for the Pro Platinum, and then we've got a combination 2D 3D product for the Deluxe product line, which is this one. And then we've got in both cases we've got training and certification, and this is an online module, or this is basically the same exercises and material as the purchased ones. These are web-based, HTML-based, I should say, and this training and certification site is actually web-based. So if you actually go to the website for this, let's see if I've got my login credentials still handy and working, logged in. So this is the same as the same material as the other products. So for instance, here's the 2D and the 3D training for the Pro products, and you can access this. And the nice thing about this training and certification site is it's online, so you can actually look at it and go through it even if you're not at your desktop computer, if you're online or have a mobile device. So that's nice. The other nice thing about this is we do have participants and a live trainer who is ready to answer questions for you. So this might be a really good thing. And then finally, the other portion of this tutorial or the training and certification site is that it has assessments. Let's see if I can find those. It's been a little while since I was here, but I believe you go to right, the assessments portion. So for instance, you'll click on these, and then once you complete each section, you'll have a series of test questions that you go ahead and answer, and then it'll tell you at the end of that assessment, how you did. So it's a pretty nice way to kind of check your progress. So that's a very nice addition to the regular training products, is this training and certification. And at the end, after you do all your assessments, you actually get a little certificate. Okay, so dimensioning, of course, is one of the key things you guys as TurboCAD users need to know about how to do. So in this case, I've gone over here into the right blank section on my upper screen here and just right-clicked and just pulled up the dimension toolbar. So I'm just going through the types of dimensions that we have. We've got orthogonal dimensions, parallel dimensions, distance dimensions, rotated, datum dimensions, and some of these baseline, continuous, and incremental, which are grayed out because they require you to click on another type of dimension first. So for instance, if I put a orthogonal dimension here, and I'm actually going to right click and choose entity, which is going to, on this 2D object here, dimension the full length of the entity. Then you see the baseline, continuous, and incremental dimensions are now available to me. So the way that those work is if you click on one of these here and then look in the status line in the lower left, it'll say pick baseline dimension. So I pick that, and now it says define the second extension origin, so I can click any number of places. So we'll just try to choose the center of this circle here, and the center of this circle here, center here, center here, and we might want to add a couple more here, here, and here. And then if we zoom in here, we'll see what those distances are. So the full distance here is the 2746, or I'm sorry, the 31.8. And if I use my edit tool, choose the dimension and pull it down here, that might make it a little bit easier to read the thing. So then we're always calculating the distance from the left-hand side in this case for these other incremental, or I should say baseline dimensions. And whenever it comes to scaling of dimensions or the sizing of the dimensions, you can always right click before you draw a dimension and change the formatting prior to adding those dimensions to your drawing. There are basically three components of a dimension: the text, the arrows, and the extension line. So the arrows and the text are controlled on this format page. The advanced page contains the dimension line and extension line. Here you see I've changed the extension line to the fire brick red, which is why you get these red lines here. I did that for demonstration purposes. You can have those be any color you want, and so you can do that. Now, a lot of times it's difficult to tell what size your dimensions need to be, what size the text and arrows need to be prior to placing the dimensions. So what I typically do if I don't know is I just put the dimensions down, and then I will use Control T, which brings up select by entity, and then I will go down to the D's where all the dimensions are listed. Click and hold that whole group with my shift key, say OK, and now I can right click and go to the properties for those dimensions. And then I can choose the size of the arrowheads or modify the size of the arrowheads or the text. So let's just, in this case, let's bump that text up to be 1 inch and hit enter. And now, of course, the text is much larger, and you know, we can adjust the individual locations of these individually if we want, so that it's more readable, by using the edit tool and just clicking till you get it right. So something like that. You, of course, if you decide you don't want a dimension in there, you can always highlight it and delete it. So I'll get rid of a couple of those. And then one other nice trick with dimensions is that I'll just click here and click that polyline. If you haven't modified the properties prior to drawing and you've got a couple set, you can also use the Format Painter tool. So I'm going to choose that. I'll choose one of these dimensions here, and then I'll go over here and it'll apply the same parameters to the dimension that I've got going here. So it's kind of a nice way to quickly format your dimensions and get them how you like them to look in a quick manner. If I go back to Control T and go down to those D's again, highlight these. One other thing that you'll probably want to do is have the dimensions on a unique layer. So I'm going to open up the Design Director palette here. Keyboard shortcut for this is F3. If you don't have it memorized, that's a good one to memorize. And I will right click and say New Layer, and I'll call this Dims, and enter. And then, since they're selected and active, I can just simply move them onto that layer by choosing this Dims layer here, and now if I make that layer invisible, those dimensions should go away. And likewise, if I want to select them all, I can right click, say select all, and we'll just delete those for now and start over. So the orthogonal dimension is probably the most commonly used, and one thing you need to note about it is it has, if you right click or you look down in your inspector bar, it's got a few different options. One is the segment option, which will choose the various segments. Notice it allows me to just pick those various segments. I can use the snap tool as well. I can come here and then just snap it so they're nice and aligned that way. And let's just use the edit tool here and put that there. So then there's the parallel dimensions. Parallel dimensions, in this case, if I've got this line here, I will see the dimension line that's parallel to the, in this case, the diagonal line. And again, you've got some options if you right click for segment and for entity. The move text option actually lets me move the text separately. Again, I think the most common ones are really the orthogonal and these baseline, incremental, and continuous. Angular dimension is another one. So let's go from there to there, and we should get 90 degrees. So that's a good one. Popular to use. The radial and diameter dimensions, as you've probably been noticing with my snaps on, these other dimensions such as the parallel dimension will make use of the snap modes. And so typically, well, I know for sure the orthogonal, when you don't have segment or entity selected, so if there's no option here, it'll now make use of the snap modes. So that's if you really need to pay attention to whether edit or entity or segment dimensioning is on, because if they are on, then your snaps won't work because it's expecting you to just click directly on the line. So that's one thing. If you're noticing that your snaps are not present or don't seem to be working, that's the reason, is that one of these modes is on. So in the case of the orthogonal, I can click there and snap there, and it'll give me that dimension. Okay, and then the radial and diameter snaps, these actually, even if your snaps are on, they just aren't required. In fact, they won't even really work. I can prove that by turning snaps off completely, and you'll see that the radial and diameter dimensions automatically seek out the arc angles or the circular objects, and will work automatically on those. Okay. If I highlight my object now, notice that the dimension lines are all blue, and what that indicates is that the dimensions are all associative. So again, if I right click on the tool before I use it and I take a look at the format here, the very first option here is whether it is associative. So what that means is that these are actually dynamically associated to the object itself. So for instance, if I now choose a circle, go to my selection info palette, and then change the radius of that circle here. In this case, I'll do both, since it is, or actually I'll do it up here. So now if I make that 1.5 and hit enter, you'll notice that the dimension is now 1.5. And in fact, I noticed something else that I should probably explain too, and let me undo that. Notice that the dimension, that the actual radius is 1.299127, but the displayed dimension is being rounded off. And so if you double click and go to the options for that, you will find under units and tolerance, I think. Yeah, okay, so precision, round off, you got it. Thanks, John. And so if I were to bump that up to a round off amount and probably increase the precision, you'll see that the dimension line will now match that of the circle as for as many decimal points as I specify. So you've kind of got to be aware of that as you're dimensioning objects or drawings, because you know, if you're using a higher level of precision in the drawing, it will potentially have a strange effect to you as you're noticing your dimensions aren't matching your objects. Yeah. So again, once you've got all your dimensions and you want to edit them at all times, I'll remind you guys you can choose entity type, hit the D key to get down to the dimensions, highlight them all, and select them, move them to a new layer, whatever you want to do. Put them back there and make them invisible again. And again, I like to select this, and I'll just delete these again here. A couple more dimension tools that are key for TurboCAD. We've got these leader dimensions, and so the leader dimensions, again, we'll work with the snap modes. So let's say I need to make a note about this object here. I'm going to snap to the center here. It gives me an arrow. I can define a couple of line segments, and then in my final segment I'm going to hit the tab key to get down to the text field and say this is my note, and then hit the finish button, and then there we have the note that I've just added to this leader. And the edit tool will allow me to move the text or any of the segments, or I could probably delete a segment as well if I want to clean it up a bit. I'm holding the control key down to do that. And then of course, just as with the other dimensions, I can go in and go to my format and change the text height or the color. So let's just make that 1, and we might want to do color as different color, so we'll make that something green just to demonstrate that. So there's the leader, and then there's the multi-leader. The multi-leader lets you add multiple segments. So let's just go here, just snap there, and maybe I want to snap here as well. I can hit the backspace if I made a mistake. I'll go there. Now we'll go here, and similarly I can add my text. This is a multi-leader, and hit enter, and now you've got the same deal where I've got the two arrows pointing to the same or different locations. So I've got a note that pertains to both, and again, if I want to right click and get rid of a segment, I can just hold the control key down and do that with the edit tool. So this is really good for annotating stuff and doing your cleanup work. Okay, so that's kind of the basics of the dimensioning for 2D objects. I will explain that once the object is a 3D object, it'll work a little bit differently. Let me just grab these 2-dimension lines. By the way, I'll also explain a nice trick. The F6 and F7 keys in TurboCAD will let you cycle through the last few objects that have been drawn. This is a nice way to kind of select stuff and modify things that you've just drawn rather than using the select tool. So F6 and F7 can be used in this case to, this is F7, I hold the shift key down, hit F7 twice, and now those last two objects that I drew, which were those leader lines, I can highlight, and I'll just hit delete to get rid of them. So I'd get used to using the F6 and F7 keys, kind of practicing those, because they come in very, very handy for a quick way to select objects, especially if you've just drawn them. So I do want to explain that if I go to an isometric mode here and extrude this object, and since I'm in the Pro product, I'll have the option to do a compound profile, which allows me to pick multiple objects, and in this case I've got a polyline with 2 circles, and I can then complete that action. And what you'll see when I go to draft mode here is that I've got basically booleans occur from those circles, since they were on the same work plane. Base work plane is the polyline. So that's one of the key differences between Pro and Deluxe, is that you've got first of all, the ACES solid modeling engine, but the ACES Extrude comes with this compound profile option for much faster modeling. Let's just go ahead and change the color of that extrusion so it's a little easier to see. Okay, and so I do want to explain that for 3D objects, you're going to get a little bit different behavior, in particular with the segment and entity dimensioning. I don't believe those will actually work, especially once it becomes a part. So in this case, it's working because probably. Actually, let me move this polyline out of the way. Just make sure. You see, the polyline was actually what was being dimensioned there, I believe. And because I've got it associative with the compound profiles, it's a little tricky. But in a lot of cases, when you're modifying a 3D object, let me maybe try to do a little bit different use case here. Yeah, the extrusion, because it was a compound profile, I think it's still associating that. Although I think I could probably, I've got my polyline in my simple extrude, and because I use a compound profile, simple extrude is associated.
Select the simple extrude.
Yep, and then explode it. Yeah. And then let's see what we get. Now we get an ACES solid. So the ACES solid won't be able to make use of the that's still using the polyline, and let's prove that by this time grabbing the polyline and moving it, and the dimension will go with it, I believe. Okay, so now if we try the same thing on this ACES object, it won't work. So there are use cases. The point is that there are use cases when you may not understand why the segment or entity dimensioning is working, and that typically happens when you have a 3D object that is either a part or an ACES solid or other type of object. So again, as I was discussing last week, one of the key things with TurboCAD is understanding what kind of object type you've got, because a lot of the tools will work or not work, or work slightly differently than what you may be expecting due to the object type. So this is again why the selection info palette is kind of critical to understand. Okay, let's go ahead and undo that a couple times. Let's see, I think I got rid of my extrusion still there. So a couple other dimension tools that we have are the quick dimension and the smart dimension. Quick dimension will allow me to quickly set various dimension types based on the parameters here in the local menu that are set. So contiguous, if I let's just undo that here, and I'll turn on radial dimensions, and we'll click there and hit finish, and now you'll see it's allowed me to add some radial dimensions. So the quick dimension, what it does is it basically seeks out what type of segments or objects are on the entity that you're working with here as well. So smart is a little bit, works a little bit differently, where depending on the individual entity that you're clicking on, it'll be smart enough to tell what type of entity or segment that is. And then the tolerance is a mechanical dimensioning tool that will allow, based on the level of tolerance you've got set here, add some tolerance levels, which of course on mechanical parts is there's a little bit of flexibility in a part. You may want to have a slightly different values here. So let's do 0.023 maybe. Okay, and now if I come here, I should get that tolerance. So for those of you working in mechanical in the mechanical space, you'll probably need that. There are some options for setting the tolerance in some of these other dimensions as well. So you can apply the tolerance here. So for instance, if I choose that, choose this segment here, you'll notice I get two sets of dimensions, which are going to be the tolerances. And there's some settings for all of those. Upper, lower, probably go 0.02 and I don't know 0.005. Yeah. Anyway, I'm not a mechanical engineer, obviously, so maybe not the best use case for those. And in this case, I've been working in imperial format. Of course, there are dimension options for metric. If you're working in a metric template, I believe they'll be set to metric automatically. So if you're going new from template and choose a metric template, which I think a couple of our guys are, at least Keith is, the dimensioning should be already set up for that. So we'll go here and choose metric, and there you have it. So basically what you want to make sure you're doing, if you're not using a template or you need to set this manually, is just go into format, and actually it's under units and tolerance, and it'll be set here, and that typically needs to be in line with your options and space unit settings. So because I'm using a mechanical or a metric template, I'm already set up for units and workspace, and using metric here as the format system. Okay, let me switch over to an architectural example, and the tools I've been mentioning so far, of course, will work on architectural objects. Let me make sure that I don't have entity or segment. Actually, I think if I do segment, it'll probably pick up that wall segment in this one. And again, these are going to be associative. So if I'm here looking at my dimension, and I highlight the wall that it's associated to, or the segment that it's associated to, it highlights blue, indicating that it is in fact associative. And again, I'll just click on these two dimensions, and let's go to properties and set this a little bit better here. So the height by default, for whatever reason, is set way too low. Let's make that maybe 1 foot. We'll make this. You wouldn't do it that way? Okay, fine. What a lot of people do like to do is they like to come in here and do the dimension scaling. Is that right? So
Dimension size on the format page,
yeah. So another way to do this is to simply go dimension size scale, and let's bump that up by, say, I don't know, 12, 25. I'm not sure what we'll get here. 25, because it's such a large formatted drawing. 25 does that. And again, if you want to do that prior to drawing your dimension, you can do it here by right-clicking on the tool prior to use, and now those settings will be in place for any of this dimension segments moving forward. Okay, so let's just undo a few of those. And where I'm going with this is there's actually a separate wall dimensioning tool here, and this is kind of nice if you're doing architectural drawings. But based on the style that I'm using, the style settings, which I mentioned at the beginning, this is using the AEC dimension style called standard. So if I go over my style manager and look at the AEC style dimension here, I've got some parameters that I can use here that are a little bit unique. If I go up to where is it? Let's see, I think. Well, actually, the AEC styles are the ones that are a little bit unique. And this is the one, remember, if I right-click on this wall style, it's telling me AEC style as opposed to just regular dimension style. So it's using these style parameters here, so I can make some adjustments here to this. Let's just turn all this stuff off, and I should only get my wall dimensions at that point. So I can do overall, and that adds those. So the wall dimension tool's pretty nice for architectural purposes. But I just basically wanted to make sure you understood that there were a couple different types of dimensioning tools for the walls.
All the dimension tools are found in all versions, all editions.
Okay, yeah, I wasn't sure. I thought it was in Deluxe, but I wasn't 100% sure. But that's good. The Quick and the Smart, I think, are the two that. Distance. Oh, you're right. I noticed that we noticed that that wasn't active until auto constraints were on. So, and that's in fact one of the constraints.
That's a pro only.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Good. Thanks, John, for having that. So that's pretty much what I was planning to cover as far as dimensions go. I don't know if any of you guys have questions specifically about dimensions. If you do, please type them in the chat window here, and we can answer those before I move on to the second part of what I wanted to talk about today, and that is the printing and layout functionality, because a lot of times they go hand in hand. So I'll keep an eye on the tracker here, and if anyone's got questions, whoops, pull that over to my other screen. Just type them in. So I think in a lot of cases, architecturally speaking, you'll dimension in model space. At least that's what I've seen from most users. Obviously, my drawing here is very, very large, and so it presents a problem when I want to print to scale. So TurboCAD's got some very nice tools called views and viewports for helping you take your drawing from your model space to one of my paper spaces. So let's go to the ArcD paper space here and play around with this and lay out our drawing here a little bit. So in this case, if I go to my properties and I go to page setup, you'll see that the piece of paper being represented within TurboCAD is this workspace sheet properties, and that's a 36 by 24 inch piece of paper. And so typically what you need to do if you're going to print on a size sheet that's that size, you'll notice these dashed lines. These dashed lines represent, in this case, 8.5 by 11 pieces of paper. So it's going to take multiple sheets of paper to print this drawing the way it's laid out according to my workspace sheet properties. So what I'm going to do is come here and pick, in this case, my PDF 995 printer driver. And one of the available sizes is the ArcD size. So as long as I've got that set and the orientation is matching, in this case landscape, and then I hit OK, now the dashed line is exactly the same size as the sheet that I'm going to print on. So this is an indication that I'll just need one 36 by 24 sheet of paper to print, which is typically what you're going to want to do. So after that, let me go back to my model space, and I'm actually going to quickly slap a roof on here because I'm going to talk about viewport properties. So we'll do roof by walls, and I'll just outline my walls here. Notice say highlight, I'll right click and say finish, and I've got a roof on my building now. So now I'm ready for sure to print, and what I'm going to do now is something called creating a view. So I'll click this option and then define the corners, first and second corners of my view. So I'm going to just draw by hand here a little rectangle, and as soon as I click the second point, we've got the option to name this. I'll call this top. Let's go to another view. I'm going to go to a front view and do the same thing. Create view, create my view, we'll call this front. And then I'm going to do one last one, which is an isometric view. So I'm going to go to an ISO view. Here we're in the ISO southeast. And again, I will create my view, draw my rectangle, and we'll call that ISO. Okay, so let's go back to my ArcD paper, which is set properly for my requirements. And now this time I'm going to choose Insert Viewport. So we'll do one viewport here. Let's choose my front. Click Go To. And this is a nice way for making sure you're getting these lined up. I can actually copy this viewport and slide it down here using the Control plus the Shift key so that it's locked to the ortho mode. And now I can double click on the properties here and go to Viewport. I want this to be the ISO view. So I'll change that to ISO view, and then if you recall, the ISO view that I created as my third viewport, or my third view I should say, is now there. And then finally I'll just insert another viewport here, and you'll notice that the geo modes will work in this as well, so I can make sure they're nice and lined up. Click here, and we'll choose top here, and close. Okay, so if I zoom in, we see my dimensions are nice and looking good. Couple of other items about the viewport that are important to understand. So I'm going to go to my viewport. The first thing you'll notice is the scale. So obviously my drawing in model space is a large drawing. It's a house, and so these scaling properties come in handy for determining or laying out your drawing and knowing the precise scale. So because the fix button is not on here, I'm not able to manipulate that parameter. So as soon as I turn fixed on here, let's just do 1:48, which I think is a common quarter-inch scale, if I remember correctly, and I'll hit enter. Now this will scale slightly. Let's do these other two at the same time. I believe we could probably do that. So go to viewport, fixed, and if there's no parameter in there, I think because they're probably different scales, but I should be able to do these both at the same time, and sure enough I'm able to do that. So now all these viewports are at the same scale as indicated here, which is a 1:48 in my case. The visible box, sometimes you don't want to have that bounding box around the viewport. Some people like them, some people don't. And then another thing to note about viewports is they can be displayed in various rendering modes. So for instance, the ISO mode here, we'll just change that and change that to that, and that should have worked, right? Maybe there's a refresh issue. Oh, it's probably because it's still selected, and obviously I don't have any light in here for some reason. Probably if I go back to my model space and do draft render, no lights. Now there's some lights. Now I bet if I go back to my paper space, the lights are now present. So the way to think of viewports is they're actually live snapshots of the model space. It's as if you're taking a camera and continuing to look at your model space representation. So this means if I were to do something to the roof. So let's go to the roof, and let's just make one of these ends a gable end. Here I'm going to choose my edit roof angle. I probably got to do that in wireframe mode. Let's change that to be 90 degrees. Say OK. Let's look at that. There. Did I finish? I'm surprised that roof went away. Oh, no, it was a refresh problem. So now we see the hole there. TurboCAD does have a way to fix that. Let me just show that. That is a pro-only feature, and that is the ability to create a wall modifier. So I'm going to choose the wall segment, and then I'm going to choose the roof segment, and that's going to clean that up automatically. Let's go back to our models or our paper space, and we see now that that's looking correct, as are the ends on these other two viewports. So the viewports are actually a live camera shot of whatever is going on in your model space. So the reason this is important, of course, is once you lay out your drawing, you need to be assured that the model is going to change and that you don't have to make any adjustments to the viewport after you do that. Okay. One other thing that's really important to understand about viewports is there are actually separate layer settings for viewports. So there's a couple of ways to modify this. So let's say in this top view I don't want to show my roof. So I can come here, this override layers visibility option is on, so I'm going to say OK, and now my roof is gone. What the override layers oh, that should have gone off. Let's just try that again. I don't know why that did that. Okay. All right. And the reason that that is the case is what that's actually referring to is if I go to my model space, the layer properties for this roof is actually on. So there's actually a separate set of parameters controlling the layers in your model space and the layers in your viewports. So if I come back here, and now that that roof is off in model space, if I want to turn the roof back on, I can do that. This has always been a little confusing to me. I don't know about you, John, this parameter. I almost think it should be the opposite. Yeah? No? I don't know. Anyway, so there are ways to control and manage the viewport layers. Let's just go. And oh well, I know. I think you also have to be careful where you do this, because I think if I highlight the roof with the layers dialog active, it's going to manipulate the layers for that. It's a little tricky to understand, but let's. The main point is that there are ways to control whether the roof is displayed in the viewport or not. You just kind of got to play around with them a little bit, because a lot of times, of course, you'll just want to have the floor plan laid out like that. Okay, and so then the final step would be to be able to print the drawing. So we'll just go File, Print, and I've got my PDF 995 driver set up, and the page all correct. I will also tell you that this Turbo PDF driver is really nice, especially if you've got multiple pages. There's a way in our Turbo PDF product, which is basically an Adobe Acrobat clone. It lets you modify PDFs. There is an option for printing out multiple pages and creating one single PDF document containing multiple paper spaces, which is something that's a little hard. Because I did change the PDF driver, notice we're back to the 8.5 by 11, so I can come down and I think we should be able to find an ArcD size, and let's go ahead and, whoops, sorry, change it to landscape. And so let's print on this PDF driver. And I believe this will bring up TurboPDF. Yes, in fact it does, and there's my printout. So that's typically how you do an architectural drawing. In a lot of cases you'll want, in the case of mechanical drawings, it is possible to do the layouts and then dimension in those viewports. So let's have a quick look at that here before we end our session. So again, I'm going to just choose Control T, whoops, and hit the D key. Choose all my dimensions, and let's just get rid of those. Can't remember, this is a 3D object, which is important to note. Okay, so let's actually, we'll just leave those tolerances in there for now. They're not going to hurt for this purpose. And again, we'll go to Create View. So let's create two views in this case. We'll create a top view, we'll call it tip, I guess, and then go here and create an isometric view. Excuse me. Okay, we'll call this ISO. Alright, so again we'll go to paper space and we'll insert those two views. So we'll go one here. And the scale is going to be based on just the math that is involved for whatever size I'm laying out these windows at. Okay, so now I do want to explain that the dimensioning tools will work in model space as well as in paper space, and these are kind of a little bit strange. In fact, let me go and reset the dimension properties. Remember, we're using in this case, per John's advice, yeah, 0.25 will work. Rather than having to manipulate the size and that, you can just do the scaling, which I believe, to John's point, is a common thing to do. Now, notice what happens here. These dimensions, as you're placing them, will say one dimension, and then once I click, they'll change to the actual dimension as it takes into account the scaling related to the paper space sizes. Okay, so again, we can just go around. So the one thing you don't ever want to do in your paper space is you do not want to dimension a 3D object in an ISO view. In fact, what you'll see happens is this kind of behavior. It's just never a good idea. You'll get inaccurate dimensions, and so you'll notice that this is saying 6.170 when in fact over here it's a 8.730. So just as a general rule of thumb, you do not want to dimension isometric views in your paper space. It'll throw you off. Alright, so that's basically all I was planning to talk about. I'll go back to the Skype meeting, and if you guys have any questions, please let me know by typing them in, or just let me know here. And hopefully you found this presentation to be helpful.
Yes, thank you, Dave.
Yeah, okay, good. Hi, Keith.
Hi. Yeah, I've been scratching the surface. This is revealing that there's much more to be found, much more useful. useful stuff. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're most welcome. Yeah, so again, I'll remind you that the training products are available. I know the training, especially the 2D stuff. Well, I guess in your case you'd have Deluxe, so you'd get the 2D and 3D uh, Deluxe product. It covers the dimensions in pretty good detail, so it might be worth purchasing. Or again, I'll remind you of the certification site. If you're really serious about learning TurboCAD, I think that's a really good investment, especially because other participants are there willing to help and answer your questions when you get stuck as you're going through the lessons. So I think the certification site is really a fantastic resource. I'd like to see more users make use of that, because it is hard, as you know, when you're learning a product. Sometimes the training won't be in line with what you're seeing on your screen or what you're experiencing. So it is really beneficial to be able to go and have a resource to answer your questions on the fly like that. So that is always good. Anybody else? Juan or Jim, do you have any? Mike, do you have anything else you want to ask? Please type it in the conversation window now. Oh, one other thing that I will mention that I almost forgot, thanks to John, is there are some dimension format codes. Let me just pull up the website here. This is also in our documentation, but if I just go here and go to John's wiki site, there are some extra parameters that you can add to your dimension lines that'll let you do some customized formatting. So for instance, you can underline certain aspects of the dimension or leader. In some cases you might want to have a degree symbol, so we've got the ability to do that through these special formatting codes that you'll type into your parameters for this. So let's see if we can get this one to work maybe. So we'll just copy that. I think we can copy that.
Copy the example in the middle column.
In the middle column?
Yeah.
Okay, perfect. So we'll just come back here. I see somebody else. No extra questions. Looking forward to it. Okay, good to know. So let's go back to TurboCAD here real quick, and probably do this in paper space, or I mean model space, and let's just. What do you think, John? Doing it for a leader maybe makes sense in this case.
You could use a
Regular orthogonal.
Yeah.
All right.
Tab into the text field.
Okay, let's try that again. And let's set the dimension right here. So let's put that back to 1. And so you're saying if I come here, choose a polyline. Whoop, sorry. Come here, choose a polyline, and then go into the text field and copy that in. And boom. Oh, that's nice. There you go. Yeah, I played around with these when we first came out, but it's been a long time since I did that. So thanks for your help. Yeah, so you can see that if you go back to this formatting page, there's quite a bit you can do with the dimensions, making use of these special formatting codes. And these actually come from AutoCAD. So they are compatible with DWG, which is a large percentage of our users are working either with other CAD engineers with DWG or may get some drawings to start with from the DWG format or in the DWG format. So suffice to say that we are supporting these special formatting codes. And John, thank you again for taking the time to help out by documenting this. I actually think this is laid out and done better than our own documentation here, at least in this particular case. So that's why I want to make sure I mentioned it. And again, this TurboCAD wiki site is a fantastic resource. So add this to the list of things that you bookmark, such as the forums, and it'll be a good resource for you as you're coming up to speed with TurboCAD. Okay. All right. Well, I think that is probably all for now. Let me just go back to the business thing. Okay. Yeah, we'll definitely get to symbols at some point. Mike, if you're not already a member of the user forum, I would suggest, and Juan as well, if you just go here and I'll type in the URL here for you guys so it's nice and handy to have. I think I can do that. I would highly recommend you go to this site and register to become a forum member because power users such as John and some of the other guys that have just outstanding TurboCAD knowledge will be a good resource for you to go to when you get stuck. So I would advise you making use of that. Plus, it's just a good place to just go on a daily basis and kind of see what's going on. A lot of changes in CAD applications all the time because we're constantly trying to evolve the product. So it's nice to be able to have a resource. It's a live site where people can suggest and trade ideas. As you probably are realizing, there's multiple ways to do things in any CAD application. So sometimes techniques come in handy, and getting other people's points of view come in handy. So it's a nice community of users that we have for transferring those ideas. So please make use of it. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording now, and thank you very much for your time, and please enjoy your continued use of TurboCAD. If you have any questions or want to follow up with me, you can do so. I'll type in my email address here. And please don't be shy if you've got any questions or want any more information about TurboCAD or our training products. Okay, thank you. I'll shut the recording off now.